The rain had been falling on Frith Street for 2 hours when Jeff Beck walked out of Ronnie Scott's. He stopped at the door, turned his collar up, and lit a cigarette. The kind of man who doesn't rush anywhere. Not at 65. Not after everything. That's when he heard it. Somewhere down the street, a guitar was crying. Not playing. Crying. Beck didn't move at first. Just stood there, cigarette between his fingers, listening. The notes were coming from around the corner. Broken in places, uncertain in others. The technique wasn't clean, but there was something in the gaps between the notes that had nothing to do with technique. He turned left and walked toward the sound. Danny Cole had been sitting on the wet pavement for 40 minutes. He tried the spot closer to the entrance first, but the man at the door, dark jacket, earpiece, the kind of face that's been told no so many times it learned to say it without opening its mouth, had pointed him down the street. "Move along, son. This isn't a busking pitch." Danny had moved, not because he was afraid, but because he didn't have the energy to argue. He was 16. Some nights that felt very young. He unzipped the case slowly. The guitar inside was his father's. A 1970s Stratocaster copy, body scratched, tuning pegs worn down to bare metal. His father had played it every Sunday morning for as long as Danny could remember. Every Sunday, same spot at the kitchen window, same cup of cold tea on the sill, eyes on the garden. His mother would stand in the doorway and listen. She'd been dead for 2 years, and his father hadn't touched the guitar since. Danny lifted it out carefully, the way you handle something that belongs to someone else, which in a way, it still did. He set the cardboard box in front of him. Inside, 3 pounds and some change. He'd been here since 6. He started tuning, and the click of the old pegs in the wet night air felt very loud. The song he chose doesn't have words. "'Cause We've Ended as Lovers" is an instrumental. Jeff Beck recorded it in 1975. Guitar doing all the talking. Sustain, where a voice would hold a note. Bends, where a voice would crack. No lyrics, no explanation. Just the guitar saying what it had to say and leaving it at that. Danny's father had played it on Sunday mornings too. Not every week. Only when he was in a particular mood. The kind that doesn't announce itself. You just notice at some point that the kitchen feels heavier than it did an hour ago. Danny didn't know the whole story behind his parents and that song. He was a kid when he first heard it. Kids don't ask, but he'd watched his mother close her eyes when the opening notes came. He'd seen his father stop looking at the garden and look instead at the neck of the guitar, like he was reading something written there. Some things are better left as feelings than explanations. Now Danny played it himself, on wet pavement in Soho. 3 pounds in a cardboard box. His father's hands were too stiff to hold a guitar anymore. The accident had taken care of that, and someone had to keep playing the song. His fingers found the opening notes, not perfectly. He got tangled on the second phrase, backed up, tried again. A man passing with an umbrella didn't slow down. Nobody was listening, or so he thought. Beck had stopped about 15 feet away. He stood with his hands in his coat pockets, collar still up, rain catching in the amber light from the club sign above him. He didn't say anything, didn't announce himself. Just watched. The kid was playing badly in some places and devastatingly honestly in others. The bad parts were technical, wrong fingers, a couple of phrases that lost their shape halfway through. Understandable. The song wasn't easy, but the honest parts. Beck had heard this piece played by people who should have been able to play it better. Session players. Professionals. He'd heard versions that were clean, precise, and completely empty. Like watching someone set a table perfectly in a house nobody lived in. This wasn't empty. He couldn't have said exactly why. Something in how the kid's hand tensed on the neck just before the difficult phrases. Bracing. Something in the way he leaned slightly forward when the melody dropped low, like he was following it somewhere. Something in the silence after the mistake. Not embarrassed, not rushing to cover it up. Just waiting, as if the space was allowed to be there. Beck lit a second cigarette off the end of the first. He kept listening. Danny was halfway through when the hard part came. He always stopped here. Not always completely. Sometimes he muscled through, fingers making the right shapes, but the sound coming out hollow in a way he couldn't name. Sometimes he just let the note fade and sat for a moment. But tonight he stopped completely. His hands dropped to his knees. His mother used to say that music lived in the places you paused, not the places you played. He hadn't understood what she meant back then. He thought he understood it better now. He sat in the rain, looking at his father's guitar, and didn't play anything. Down the street, Beck exhaled smoke and waited. After about 30 seconds, Danny started again. Not from where he'd stopped, from the beginning, like he needed to earn the ending this time. Beck watched him set his shoulders, reset his grip, and take the song back to the first note. That was when Beck walked over. He didn't say anything at first. He just sat down on the low step behind Danny, a step Danny hadn't noticed. Close enough that Danny, when he opened his eyes, startled and pulled the guitar back. Sorry. Danny's voice came out smaller than he intended. Beck shook his head. Don't stop. Not a famous voice. Not the kind that fills a room. Just a voice in the rain, quiet and unhurried. Danny looked at him. 60-something. Wet coat. The kind of eyes that have spent a long time listening to things and stopped needing to comment on everything they heard. Go on, Beck said. The difficult bit's coming. Danny wasn't sure if this stranger knew the song or was just reading his body language. Either way, he put his fingers back on the strings. He played worse now, with someone watching. The first phrases came out stiffer, self-conscious the way music always gets when someone sits too close. Beck didn't react to the mistakes, didn't wince, didn't nod the way people do when they want you to know they're rooting for you. He just sat. The rain had gone thin, barely there now. A taxi idled at the junction. A couple walked past without looking down. Danny reached the hard part again. His hands went still. The silence lasted longer this time. Long enough that Beck shifted slightly behind him. Then Danny played the note. Just one at first. Uncertain. A question more than a statement. Beck said nothing. Danny played the next. And the next. His fingers weren't nimble here. Not confident. But they were moving, and the notes were landing where they were supposed to land. Shaky, but right. He played through the bridge for the first time. When the melody came back on the other side, steady, familiar. Danny exhaled slowly through his nose and didn't stop. Behind him, Beck looked at the wet stones between his shoes for a moment. The song ended the way it always ends. Not with a conclusion exactly. More like a door left open. Danny let the last note fade. The street took it. Neither of them said anything for a moment. That's not easy to play, Beck said. I know. Danny cleared his throat. I've been working on it for a while. Where'd you learn it? Danny ran his thumb along the headstock. My dad used to play it. I'd hear it every Sunday. Beck looked at the guitar. Not a quick glance. A real look. The scratches on the body, the worn tuning pegs, the way the finish had gone dull at the edges, rubbed away by years of the same hands in the same places. Used to, he said. Danny was quiet a moment. He was in an accident. His hands, he stopped, tried a different way in. He doesn't play anymore. Beck nodded once, the kind of nod that doesn't push for more. My mom liked this song, Danny said, and something shifted in his voice on that sentence in a way he probably didn't plan. She died 2 years ago. Road accident. He wasn't sure why he was telling a stranger this, but the stranger wasn't reacting the way strangers usually did. That quick, uncomfortable softening, and that helped. Dad stopped playing after that, Danny continued, took the guitar down off the shelf a few weeks later, put it in the case, put the case on the top shelf. I got it down about 6 months ago. Figured someone should. Beck looked at the cardboard box, the coins, the folded paper tucked under the edge. You're here every week, he said. Every Saturday. Danny looked at the box too. Dad's got medication. It adds up. Whatever I make goes home. Beck didn't say anything for a moment. He reached into his coat. Danny half expected a wallet. Some notes passed down quietly, the way people sometimes did. Kind, but at arm's length. The gesture of someone who wants to help without getting too close to the reason why. Instead, Beck pulled out a pen. Can I? He held his hand out toward the guitar. Danny passed it over, unsure what he was agreeing to. Beck turned it over, found a patch of wood on the back, near the base. He wrote something, small, unhurried, and handed it back. Danny read it. 4 words, a name underneath. He looked up, but Beck was already standing, brushing the wet from his coat. Wait, Danny got to his feet fast. Are you? Beck reached into his coat again. A small card. He held it out and Danny took it with both hands. Call that number Monday morning, Beck said. Tell them I gave you this. Danny looked at the card, looked at the name on it. You played that song honestly, Beck said. That's harder than playing it correctly. He walked back up Frith Street toward the light of the club entrance. The man with the earpiece held the door without a word and Beck went in. Danny stood on the wet pavement. He looked at the card, then at the guitar, then at the 4 words written in the wood. Play it for her. In one of his last interviews, given in the autumn of 2022, a few months before he died, a journalist asked Jeff Beck if there was a moment from the past decade that stayed with him. Not a concert, not a session, just a moment. Beck thought for a second. He was usually quicker with deflection. There was a kid, he said, London, playing in the street. He was playing one of my pieces. The journalist waited. Couldn't quite get through it, Beck said. But then he did. A pause. He played it better than I wrote it. He didn't give a name, didn't give a location, left it at that and moved on to the next question. Danny Cole is 19 now. He's in his second year at Guildhall, on a scholarship he applied for 3 years ago, with a reference that arrived by post and which he keeps in a folder he doesn't open often. His father's hands are better. Not what they were, maybe never what they were, but better. He started playing again last year. Sundays, kitchen window, cold tea on the sill. Danny plays with him sometimes. Not always kids we've ended as lovers. Sometimes something Danny wrote himself. His father closes his eyes when he hears it and stops looking at the garden. On the back of his father's guitar, near the bass, if you know where to look, 4 words and a name. The name you already know. The 4 words, play it for her. He does, every time.